Now it's time for me to lecture you. I'm gonna have fun lecturing you because this is actually like something I enjoy. Because this time period is actually entertaining. Yeah, like not being modern is not fun because it's like who cares about Louis XIV and his wars of whatever. This is like right in the now. We know it. So let me pull up this thing and then we're gonna get started. So this is we're gonna use this one, the 1946 to 1991. It's all units, all the details for this unit. Basically, it's gonna leak out some stuff. It's gonna leak some stuff out, but I'm not gonna read the whole thing because that's obviously waste of time. So I'm gonna use it as a guide to try and like expand on what you know if you don't know this already. So, all right. Also, for some reason, when you made the video last time, my voice was really bad. It sounded really like muffled. I don't know. It wasn't muffled, but it sounded like kind of bad. So hopefully it doesn't happen again. I'm not sure if it will. Because I know that for like my side of things, so whenever like my friends hear me, it's like actually pretty crisp. But like whenever the OBS comes in, it's like what the hell is going on here? I can't understand. So we're gonna go over this one real quick, the stage notes, which is gonna be for the whole entire unit, front to back, and then I'm gonna go through the real quick overview with this marker loading, which is it has visuals and bolded letters so you know what's important. Although this leaks out, this does not include a lot of things, so it's really not that great. Hello, Seth. Or just like no, I'm just helping Antonio Unit 9. But since you guys have Piper, I recommend you guys tune into this because like it's Unit 9, which is apparently something you haven't been taught well. So I guess
that's that one again. The Cold War or the World War II?
Yep, Cold War. Cold War.
Okay.
So it's actually pretty interesting stuff,
Yeah, I need to relearn it because like I was like just blanking at the time.
Yeah, I understand. Online school is not easy, bro. So I'm gonna try and help you guys with that. And then let's see. Okay. Okay. Is it? Jane? Wait. Does Jim Martin even takes Euro? I don't think he does. Okay. Well, anyways. So this is gonna be on here, yeah. So I'm gonna go through this first in pretty extensive detail, going over the rough points which you gotta know, and then I'll go over this graphic thingy, which will help you guys with like a brief overview, and then I'll take questions and explain other things if I have to. Also, I've searched up some amazing, guiding, images to help you guys with that. So it will pretty much run like a online lecture, but it won't be boring, I promise. Mostly won't try to make it boring. All right, okay, you guys ready? All right, thank you. All right, Antonio. So this all begins with the Yalta Conference, right? This is in 1945. Let me find a picture actually, because this will probably help you guys out. Yalta. Oh, I can't do it here. I need to use that for later. Yalta Conference. Okay. So basically, it's where the big three met, right? The big three being Churchill, Stalin, Roosevelt. This is Stalin, the Soviet Union leader. This is Roosevelt, the American leader, and this is Churchill, the British leader. Now, I believe this is gonna the three are gonna not be like this for very long because afterwards the war ends. I believe like one of them dies, so Truman's gonna take over for the U.S. and then eventually Churchill's gonna die too. And after that, Stalin will die shortly after, and you have Khrushchev. So that's just kind of the succession of things. But this is the Yalta Conference. It happens in near the end of the war, right? So this is like basically when the map looks like this. The map being like, look at that. That's insane. Germany's getting absolutely crushed on both fronts. They're not winning at all. They're being steamrolled. And so at this point, if you are the Americans or if you're the Soviet Union, you get to kind of think about the aftermath, right? You're like, okay, how can we divide Europe and get the best deal? Because this is what they're all thinking now. Because as you can see, Germany is no longer as strong as it was before. Not back in like 1939, where it was invading Poland and France and just blazing through Europe. This is completely opposite. The tables have turned. So basically, the whole idea to get to know here is that Europe is changing to where the Allies on the left are clamping down the Axis, and so are the Soviet Union. And you have these two ideologies that are completely different. They're like fire and ice, but they're united because they have a common enemy, which is Nazi fascism, and the authoritarian powers that have invaded them. So this is basically the map, and you have the Yalta Conference, where basically it's sit down and they divide up Europe. The whole results of this plan basically state that the Americans will kind of split Germany, and then the Soviet Union will have all this eastern land to govern over. But the concern is that the Allies wanted the Soviets to give free elections to those nations. So the Soviets, reluctantly agreed, but as you all know, this never happened because the Soviet Union just basically made puppet states, or as we call them, satellite nations. Satellite meaning like they kind of orbit around the planet. or in this case, it'd be the Soviet Union. So they kind of are part of the Warsaw Pact, or the communist bloc of countries, where, as Churchill will state later, there's an iron curtain that falls upon Europe, where these states are not they're not really responding to the West, and they're just pretty much isolated in their own little communist bubble, right? So kind of picture that. It's two spheres of influence kind of developing, and the Yalta Conference sets this all off. And right now they're all peaceful and friendly because they're fighting Germany. But once the war ends, these guys are going to flip on each other, where they're going to team up against Stalin in a Cold War. All right, so that's the Yalta Conference. And basically, like I said, Stalin pledges to allow democratic elections in Eastern Europe countries, but this never really happened, all right? If it did happen, it would be like this. You'd probably go up to the voting booth, and you would see on the ballot, there's one guy's name, and that's literally it. And the next term is going to be the same guy's name. And after that, it's going to be the same guy's name until the guy dies. So pretty much, you never get an actually fair election. And give me 1 second, I'll be back. All right, sorry, I'm back. So basically, elections were not fair, and if they were fair, they were just, one person would be voted in all the time because there's only one person running for the ballot, which is, of course, not democracy. And Germany also gets divided into 4 regions. So the U.S. occupied region, the French occupied region, Britain occupies region, and the USSR occupies the region. I could actually find a map to kind of help you guys visualize that, right? So the Germany Yalta Conference, division. This is probably what I need to look at. Okay. So this is a good map of representation of what we're talking about here. This is, well, actually, let me see if I can find a better map. This is a little bit, it works, but it's a little bit small. No, not that, not at all. Okay, let's use this, whatever is fine. So basically the idea is that with this, you have France on the side over here, which is, France is bordering this area, so it makes sense for them to occupy it. The British are occupying the northern half, and then the Soviets occupy the eastern half, because this is basically where they, made advances to in World War II. Or if you reference this map, it's kind of similar, right? The Soviets are in this area in the east, the Americans are in the west, and so naturally the split kind of just makes sense to split this way. And if you really zoom in closely, I don't know if I could do this for you guys, but I want to. Let me see if I can do this for you guys. I don't think. Okay, let me just open this in a new tab. Let me see. Will that help? Come on, please. Okay, come on. All right, I got it. Okay. All right, what do you guys see? This is kind of distorted. I know the image is not great, but what do you guys see right here? Can anyone see that? It's very tiny and minuscule, but it's very important. Antonio, do you see this?
Like different countries.
Right,
like
that is so important because that is in Berlin. That's the capital of the old Germany and also the current Germany. But this is where you have all 4 spheres of influence in one city deep in Soviet territory. Now that sounds dumb, right? But they didn't realize that because at the time they didn't really think about the negotiations. So, groupthink made it to where there's like, yeah, good idea, let's follow through it. But this is kind of dumb because this is way deep in Soviet territory, and you're gonna find out at the Berlin airlift that the Americans can't support their troops in here because this is so deep in U.S. territory, USSR territory. You can't just trot through here, right? Because that's like invasion. So this is kind of a dumb mistake. But this is also a source of conflict and tension. And this is just really weird to point out because this is all land that you have all around, which makes sense. It's borders that are connected to the countries that are Western. But then Berlin's this little outlier here of this little sparsely country that's divided into so many spheres of influence. And so that's the thing I want to point out there. It's just that it's kind of minor, but it's also quite important. All right, moving on. So then after this, you have the United Nations that gets formed, and that is the the successor to the League of Nations. And right, the League of Nations was, as you know, very kind of inefficient. They weren't really doing their job. Even today, I mean, you can argue that the United Nations aren't really doing their job. I mean, the stuff in Myanmar, they're not doing much about that. The thing in China, they're not doing much about that. So it's like you could argue both sides that there's a continuity that things haven't really changed. Or you could argue that the United Nations haven't made a big difference because they've actually intervened, which you'll see in the future, where NATO and the UN are intervening in global conflicts and ethnic genocide, where they're kind of stepping in, putting on their blue cats, and trying to be the peacekeepers of the world. So just both perspectives account for it. But the United Nations is formed in this time period after World War II because they realized that we need to work together to prevent war again from happening. And this has the USA, France, UK, and also the USSR. So keep in mind the USSR is not excluded. Eventually China joins it too, and China being at first Taiwan and then actually communist China. So both have a chance to have a seat, and this is an international organization. It's what you call a supranational organization. And yes, Vincent, I'm recording. Okay, so that's basically the idea here. Is that why are you? Okay, I'm going D&D. Thank you for Antonio. This is why I go on D&D. It's because people like that. Okay. Someone tell him I'm recording, because I guess he didn't hear that. Okay, then you have the Postum Conference. This is happening after the war. So, sorry, this is not happening afterwards. It's happening the same year as the Yalta Conference, but it kind of follows up on the Yalta Conference, where now, Truman is succeeding Roosevelt, because Roosevelt dies, and he basically, well, actually, I don't think, does he die or does he get his term limit? I forgot which one it was, but, I mean, Roosevelt served like 3 terms, so, definitely wasn't a 2 limit. It wasn't the 2 limit term thing that we have now in the United States. He died? Okay, Churchill died. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay. So just kind of know that, Truman takes over, and it's not Roosevelt by some people. People think that, some people think that Roosevelt was the one who dropped the bombs on Japan. It was not him. It was actually Truman. Because Truman sat in on the last phase of the war, the very last phase, the last sliver of, the Pacific Theater, where he was like, okay, we got to end this war, so we're going to drop nukes on Japan. And that's what happened. So it wasn't Roosevelt, it was Truman. And Truman, he demands fair elections, like I said, for the Eastern Europe, but Stalin refuses. Eventually they give in, but, Stalin doesn't really follow through with that, because he's Stalin. And then you have a buffer zone form. A buffer zone meaning, I'll show you guys, again, this picture. So let's imagine you were the Soviet Union. Let's just shift perspectives for a second. Let me actually zoom out, because that's way too zoomed in. Okay, so if you're the Soviet Union, and let's say this is like Russia, right? This is all Russia. But this area is not Russia. This area is other territory, foreign land, right? And so you want to prevent an invasion of the motherland again. Because like when Germany came in, they steamrolled to Moscow. They almost hit Moscow. They didn't hit Moscow. They sieged Leningrad. They attacked Stalingrad. They attacked all the vital cities of your country. And that was because you let your guard down. So now the Soviets are like, we're not going to do that again. We're not going to make the same mistake. So we're going to take over all this extra land. So it's a buffer zone. It's something we could kind of cushion upon. So in case the Americans attack us, they have to go through Poland, Lithuania, Ukraine, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, all these countries right here that you're looking at right now, before they can reach actually Russia. So that's the plan. They want to try and prop up the defenses in case of a future war. But also, it kind of thinks, if you think about, ideological differences, it helps them spread communism in these areas, because they're basically justifying them occupying these places of military bases and military tanks, because they're like, hey, I want to protect the motherland. But also because we won the war, so we have the justification to basically just intrude on your property and just occupy you, with force. And this creates these satellite nations we know as the Eastern Bloc countries. Okay, so that is basically the Soviet Union and the conferences you have, the diplomatic relationships that happen before the war and after the war. Okay, so I kind of talked about this already, but afterwards, Churchill will denounce the Soviet Union and create the Iron Curtain speech, where he basically just says that, there's a huge difference in Europe now, with the East being separated from the West. There's no cohesion anymore, and it's a war between democracy and capitalism. Sorry, democracy and communism. And it's also capitalism versus communism. So that is the shift here. So instead of going against fascism, you're going against communism. And then you have West Germany. So West Germany forms, and you have East Germany on the right, West Germany on the left. Again, these are conflicting sources of influence. Their Berlin Wall is made to separate them. And like I said, the Eastern Germany is not democratic, but the Western Germany is. So just kind of know that. All right, now we're talking about containment. This is a big part, because this is what the U.S. pledges to do, because they realize that, communism is not gonna, it's gonna spiral out of control if we don't stop it, right? If you think about, the domino theory in Vietnam, where they're like, hey, if this country becomes communist, if China's communist, if North Korea is communist, if North Vietnam's communist, then what else could be communist? So that's the plan. It's like, we need to stop them from becoming communist, because communism in their eyes is a threat to their own society, because eventually, if it becomes a worldwide thing, then a whole world war is going to break out, and it's going to cause more lies. So not a cool thing for them. And so then you have the Truman Doctrine, which is established here, basically establishes the use policy of containment. So kind of think of like, a jar, like a jar containing something. You don't want the thing to get out of the jar, so you want to contain it in a jar. So the concept is here that they're trying to contain communism, right? And so they help countries like Greece and Turkey. They help make them stronger. They help, give them aid, so that way they don't fall into the communist trap. And also that way they can also act as, launching points for invasions or missiles or whatever. Because eventually the U.S. is going to put nuclear missiles in Turkey aimed at, guess who? The Soviet Union. So yeah, that's a pretty big deal. All right. And the Marshall Plan. This is very important. This is basically where the U.S. just starts pumping money into the economy of Europe, because they realize that, Europe is so devastated. So many cities have been bombed, burned, it's just been pillaged. Nothing is really set up for a economic prosperous country. So you need to help them out. You need to help them reconstruct and rebuild. Just like the American Civil War, where after that happened, we had Reconstruction, right? So same concept here. But the thing is, this was very, very vital, because if America didn't do this, if the Western countries did not intervene, Europe would most likely be communist. Because if you think about it, if people are starving, if there's no housing because everything got bombed and destroyed and burned, if people aren't being paid because there's no the workplace got destroyed in a factory fire by a tank or something, you're not going to have much of a regard for democracy. You're going to want something that's more socialist. You're going to want something that's more, government helping me because I need to survive. So that really appeals to the communist nature of things. And so this was a time for the Soviet Union to kind of take advantage of that, to where in Eastern Europe, especially, when they, liberated all the countries, well, quote unquote liberate, they basically just controlled them and said, hey, you guys are, really screwed over economically, so let me, introduce communism and help you guys get better. And this is, for their eyes, it was like they were the saviors of their country. Although in the U.S. it was like, oh crap, they're turning communist. So that's the perspective here. And the Marshall Plan basically makes it so the U.S. puts a stop on the containment of communism, because if they don't stop that, all these other countries are going to follow suit, and then Europe might become communist. So they basically just give this huge financial package of money. It's a stimulus. It's basically just like the opposite of war reparations, right? Because in World War I, after the Treaty of Versailles, Germany had to pay America and all these countries a bunch of money that they couldn't afford because they were broken themselves. But this is the opposite. Notice the shift here. The U.S. is paying other countries, saying, just have this money. It's a grant. Don't pay me back. I want you to just get better yourself so that you don't become communist. That's the whole purpose of this, right? So that's really important. Notice the shift. It's that instead of asking for money from war-torn countries, you're helping war-torn countries rebuild. You're setting aside the bitterness of, the Holocaust, of the wars. Although they did have the Nuremberg trials, but this was a shift where it's like, despite that, we need you to get better and stronger so that we don't become communists, and you can help fight with us against, the USSR if there was a proxy war or whatever. So this is basically their way of propping up Europe, and it's an economical detail. And this causes what you call the miracles of Europe, of Western Europe, where basically it's an economic miracle, meaning all of a sudden the economy just spikes. I mean, like, everything's going well. Job employment rates are going up. People aren't living below the poverty line. Factories are rebuilding. Industrial capacity is ramping up again. It's getting better because the Americans in the Marshall Plan are helping them out. And so I have a picture of this right here, where basically it looked like this. That was the symbol. Basically, I don't exactly have any images of the money going in, but you can kind of visualize that it went to these countries over here, and it just basically gave them a chance to grow food, agriculture. They got lots of money to spend on the their country and made them better. Okay, and now we're going to go on to the next part. So that's the Marshall Plan. Very important. It's a pivot in world politics. It's a very essential part of American doctrine, because it shows the Truman Doctrine in action, where it's like, we want to stop communism, so to do that we're going to take an active role in suppressing it by indirectly stopping it, right? Because they're not stopping communism by going head to head with the USSR. They're indirectly doing it by sending other countries money so that they don't have to become communist. That's the detail. All right, so then you have the Berlin crisis. This is where basically the USSR is like, okay, you guys are sending money to all these countries, and I don't like that, so we are going to blockade Berlin and basically starve you guys out. And if you remember the map that I showed you, right, this is Berlin. It's deep in Soviet territory, so the U.S. can't just drive supply trucks to Berlin. I mean, they could, but that would be a very big problem with tensions and border crossings and whatever. So it really didn't get anywhere. Where the USSR put tanks and barriers and barricades to where you cannot go in the city because this is under Soviet control now. So they're kind of playing dirty with this, right? Because this was a treaty and they're not following through with it. But it's not going to start a war, because obviously a war would be totally devastating and not what anyone wants. Because you just had the Second World War where most countries were devastated and people were dying, and so you don't want a third one. So this is why nothing happened with in terms of fighting. So the Americans were like, okay, we can't do that, so we can't drive resources and supplies to the Berlin, so we have to fly them in. And this is an example of U.S. aerial supremacy, where basically we just had 277,000 flights of just planes making trips to and from Berlin over Soviet airspace, dropping food, medicine, other necessary supplies, chocolate for the children, pamphlets for supporting capitalism, whatever, you name it. They're just sending stuff at them because they need them to not be starving. That's because it shows the USSR that the U.S. is not going to back down when the Soviets are trying to be strong or trying to look tough. All right, so this is the picture of the Berlin. I absolutely love this because this is exactly what happened, right? So if all these people that are starving, these Berliners, you see the houses over there, they're still under construction. They're not really that, they're not really that developed. They're trying to rebuild this stuff because of the bombings that happened before the war. And he says American planes landing. It's dropping food. It's airdropping these supplies to these people so that they don't starve. Really important detail. All right, guys. This is once again a demonstration of the Marshall Plan, but also of just American diplomacy and foreign foreign policy. Yes, that's what you call it. So yeah, basically like this. They have planes going from these airships in Western Germany into Berlin, dropping off stuff and coming back. I know that Mr. Piper probably didn't talk about that really in detail, which is fine, but it's a detail I like to stress because it's really cool. Or at least I find it's really cool. All right, so that is the Berlin airlift, which happens to relieve the Berlin crisis. It is a major success. East Germans love the U.S. for it, and they're like, wow, this is actually really cool. And then also it kind of causes a lot of inspiration and raises the morale of other countries in Western Europe because they kind of have faith now that capitalism is going to triumph against communism, or that they have a chance of winning. Okay, next part, major detail, NATO, all right, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So I'm going to ask Antonio, what do you know about this? Down. Yeah, basically, it was just like we're an alliance to where attack on one is attack on all, right? So it gets founded in 1949, and it's basically a response to the Berlin crisis because they see that the Soviet Union is not playing nice. They're trying to impose their own, they're trying to flex their own muscles. They're trying to invigorate war. So we don't want to be consumed by the USSR. So we want to team up and fight the USSR, as in deterring the USSR from attacking us. Right? Because this is not just like, we're not saying we're all going to fight the USSR at one point in our lives. We're saying that we want to stop the war by being stronger, right? So it's kind of like that propaganda from the Nazi regime where it's like the bundle of sticks, right? You can't break the bundle of sticks easily because it's a bundle of sticks. But if it's one stick, you can break the stick easily. You can snap it in half with like one finger. Right, that's fascism. I made that connection to the Nazi propaganda. But I'm saying the same idea applies where it's like strength in numbers. So NATO is an example of that, where these countries like France, Britain, basically all the democratic capitalist countries are uniting together to form a coalition, which is going to protect themselves from any threat of communism. And the Soviet Union responds to this by forming their own thing called the Warsaw Pact. Warsaw being the capital of Poland, and at the time Poland was also controlled by the USSR. It was occupied. And so NATO and Warsaw Pact, they're basically just like, it's basically just copy and pasted it, but of like different nations on different ideologies. So it's very much the same idea for both sides, but it's just different countries involved. And this kind of intensifies the split between the West and the East, because now the East is actually a block of nations. It's not just a bunch of satellite nations controlled by the Soviet Union that have military targets in them. It's a cohesive military alliance where it's just basically like you really can't break them up now, right? So this is forming at the time period. And in the same time period, you have China, where Mao Zedong is leading his civil war against Chiang Kai-shek, which is a nationalist, which is also democratic. So you have the democratic East, the communist West. History does not go over this much because it's not that important for us. But in this detail, you have to know that the communists win in China, and they established the People's Republic of China. And this kind of shocks the U.S. because it's like, oh crap, our containment is failing, because they literally send all these planes and these bombs and these rifles to the Democrats to say, hey, use this to fight the communists in China, and they just suck because they're incompetent. And because of that, the other China, which China, huh? The real one, yes, the communist one. You mean Taiwan? See, until you gotta be more specific here, but yes. Basically, the U.S. was supplying them with stuff, and it wasn't really working out. Where they weren't really winning the battles because their political structure. I'm not gonna go into this because it's way too detailed, not something you know for AP. But basically, just know that China became communist, and it was a blow to U.S. containment policies because it was like, crap, now it's going to spread everywhere. And it kind of does, because after World War II, you have North Korea that gets built because the Soviets kind of just, occupied that part of Korea. And at the same time, the U.S. retaliates by creating South Korea, which is a democratic nation too. So you have this split. And then you're going to see the Korean War happen, where basically, the North invades the South, supported by the Soviets, the Americans, and the UN support the South to beat back the North, and then China comes in and then makes a stalemate, and then nothing really happens, and you have the 30th parallel, which basically creates a ceasefire, and then the war just kind of, it doesn't really go anywhere, but at least it shows that communism and capitalism, when they go head to head, really none of them really win. It just kind of becomes a bloodbath. So it is an example of why a war would not be a great idea, because it's going to be just like this, or like somewhat like this. And these are what you call the hot wars of the Cold War, meaning there's wars that are fought with actual people, actual bullets, actual deaths, versus the Cold War being more like a political, just like, this country against that country. It's like a staring contest, basically, instead of like a fighting contest. Okay, and then small detail, the hydrogen bomb is developed by the U.S. It's basically just like atomic bomb, but 10 times better. It's more destructive, and that kind of shocks the USSR. But then the Soviets, they retaliate because in 1953, they built their own bomb, right? They built their own atomic bomb, and then China comes in and builds their own bomb, and then India comes in and builds its own bomb. So everyone has a nuclear bomb now. Everyone knows how to make a nuclear bomb, and that kind of shows things are going in a bad direction, because if everyone has a nuclear bomb, well then, if war breaks out, that's actually going to be devastating. It's not going to be just like tanks and artillery and planes. It's going to be like destruction of cities in seconds. So this is what you would call mutually assured destruction, or MAD. This is where basically the USSR and the USA and the Eastern Bloc, whatever, they're all just like ensuring their own destruction of each other. Basically, where it's saying, if you bomb us, we'll bomb you. And then, none of us are going to win because we're all going to die. So that's the whole idea here, is that nuclear bombs become a deterrent for war, but also a cause of tension, paradoxically. So it's helping to ease the war, but also escalating it in, a different way. So just know the nuance of the atomic bomb and how that's really important. Okay, Eisenhower becomes president, and we're going to move on. That's not that really important. Okay, gulags. You guys know what a gulag is, right? Let's see what's in the chat. Who knows what a gulag is? Or I'll say, who doesn't know what a gulag is? Okay, so you guys all know what gulag is. All right, Denzel, what's a gulag? Playing Tetris, really, bro?
I literally just said I have no idea. Why are you asking that question?
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay. All right, John, do you know what gulag is?
Isn't it like the forced labor camps?
Yes, good job. And where are they?
In Russia, right? Or like Soviet Union?
Yes, good. They are more specifically in Siberia, the cold northern part of Russia, or the USSR. So yeah, they are basically forced labor camps. I can show you a picture if you want, but they're kind of a little bit sad. But I guess you are all high schoolers, so who cares? Gulag. There we go. So you see Russian people with hammers, working hard labor in these places that are not really sanitary, not really good for their lives, not great living standards. It's basically just a labor camp. I mean, really, that's all I can describe it. And it sucks. And guess who went there? Mostly people that were enemies of the state, people that were, deemed not communist enough, people that were, rebellious, or people that were enemies of the state, whatever, you name it. War prisoners went here too. So, gulags, important detail. It just shows that the Soviets were pretty brutal with their ways of governing, and that it was a big shift from, democracy, where in America, the closest thing we got to gulag was Antonio knows it. Yes, sir, internment camps. This. Now, I guess you guys don't know this, but basically, during World War II, they put Japanese people into internment camps, basically like the Holocaust, but except not killing them, making them work instead, or detaining them. And yes, the US did this because they were scared of the Japanese being spies and traitors, so I know it sucks, but this is what happened, alright? That is the history of this. So the US basically rounded up the Japanese, put them in the camps, and this is the closest we ever got to really having a gulag, I guess, if you want to say that. Although we do have these, I see the term. This is kind of linked to current events, but whatever, I'll show you this. This is kind of similar, but not exactly. I can't make the exact connection. This is more like they're just kind of staying there, Children, yeah. I mean, they're not being worked, at least. That's the good thing. If they're being put into labor, then, I mean, that's a bigger deal, but...
That's kind of lame, though.
So, okay, connections, right, guys? You see the things? You see the lines connect, right? You have the ICE camps, you have the gulags, you have the internment camps, and you have the Uyghur camps. You have most of these things, and okay, thank you. So we're gonna move on with that. So gulags, important detail. All right, Stalin basically makes a lot more gulags when he's in charge, but then once he leaves, Khrushchev comes in and he just stops making gulags because he's like, this is dumb. We don't need gulags. We need people to live happier lives. So Khrushchev is basically just like kind of undoing what Stalin does. Stalin is a bit too radical for the USSR. All right, he gets a lot of changes. He kills a lot of people. I mean, probably known for people that starved under his regime. So yeah, pretty big deal. All right. Okay, KGB. This is the Soviet police, secret police force. It's basically just like think of the CIA or the FBI, but like with the Soviet Union, except being more like scary.
Extreme.
Like if you guys read like 1984, think of like the Thought Police, basically. If you read that book, if you don't read that book, you probably know what I'm talking about. But just think of just like a really scary police force that basically is out to get you. All right, it's always out to get you. If you say the wrong word, if you mutter in your sleep and say that you don't like Stalin, you're gonna probably get dragged to a gulag. Okay, if you say that you're to your workplace while you're having tea, that the Soviet Union is not doing that great and that you'd rather move to America, you're going to the gulag. All right, so anything can make you to the gulag, and these guys are pretty much in charge of investigating for dissent and traitors and people that are not communist enough. Okay, so KGB and gulags go hand in hand. All right, Khrushchev. So after Stalin dies, Khrushchev takes over. He is pretty important because he's going to flip the tables. Like I said, he starts this policy of de-Stalinization, meaning no more Stalin. Basically, where Stalin's policies of the gulags, of collectivization, are going to be reversed. They're going to be taken away and they're going to be changed to something else that's more effective in his eyes. And by collectivization, I mean basically sharing food. So, like, instead of, if you're a farmer and let's say you create 10,000, you farm 10,000 potatoes, right? Instead of having those 10,000 potatoes to sell like you would in America, you would basically have the government come over, knock on your door, take all the potatoes, and then 10 months later be like, mailed a bag of potatoes and be like, this is your food, this is your contribution to the country. That's basically what this is. So it's like farmers were not having a good deal because they weren't getting their own, they weren't owning the land, basically. They were working for the government. And so it's all collectivized and it'd be split up in the end. True communism, am I right, guys? That's what happens.
Oh, yeah.
And this is bad because it kills people. They started starving because there was enough food to go around. So, pretty grim too. Okay. This is, oh great, this guy. Antonio, talk about him. I'm not going to do this. Yes, okay, perfect. So yeah, Gulag, literature that expresses the Gulag's badness, this guy, all right? So know that. All right, moving on. Hungarian Uprising. This is basically, I'm just going to find a picture. This is more easy to describe.
You hungry, Will?
96. Hungary, yes. Who is Hungary? Some Turkey. All right, here we go. So this is basically where the, like I said, when Khrushchev came into power, he started this policy of de-Stalinization. So it gave some countries the hope that they could start their own revolution, nationalize their own country and separate from the USSR, or succeed in this case. And so Hungary was one of these countries where students and the youth, the young generation, they're all like, we want out. We want to get out of communist control. We want to become democratic. We want to be like the West. We don't want to be communist under USSR influence. And what did the Soviets do? Well, they did that. So they did that. And I think these pictures speak louder than words, right? So you guys get the picture, right? I mean, this is happening. That's happening. They're basically just clamping down on the military, right? They're not giving a crap, and they're just coming in with guns and tanks, and they're just killing people. Yeah. So whoever resisted got pretty much slaughtered. Did not work. The uprising was put down, and what you gotta know is that it was unsuccessful by a long shot. And this was the first attempt, though, by the people to try and rebel against the USSR. But once this was put down so violently that other countries would try to, not do that because they realized that it wouldn't be that effective. But this is one of the early examples of this. So students and workers in Budapest start to, they start to ask for reform and demand, non-communist parties, which is a big deal in that time because you know that these nations that have elections, quote unquote, have one ballot, and that one ballot is for one guy who is apparently a communist. So elections weren't really that cool. And then this doesn't work because they get invaded by the USSR physically, where they're just intervening directly. The USA does not take part in this because they realize that they really can't, because they can't just put their own takes in here and be like, hey, stop attacking the people, because at this time period it was so like the tensions were so high that if this happened, it would probably start another war, and nobody wanted that. So it was just basically where they had to sit and watch as they got run over. Okay, and then you have this stuff where basically Khrushchev wanted to improve the economy. He started implementing more reforms that lean towards the thing we call consumerism. Consumerism meaning, like the stuff we have now, like your phones, your Apple phones, your computers, let me think, your Xboxes. Those are ideas of consumerism because you buy the stuff not because you need to survive, but because you have the money to buy it, right? It's because you have the means or you have the wealth. So I'm interested in consumerism. Let's find a good picture. yeah, Coca-Cola is a great example where it's just like a brand that's so well known, that's so big to where everyone just buys it because like, no one here, I don't think, in this VC has ever had a Coca-Cola, right? So we all have been subject to consumerism, and even if you walk around like Walmart or Amazon or wherever, you're going to be buying stuff that you might not even need, but it's because you have the money to do it. That's why you're doing it. And so this is a big idea that drives a lot of European economies where it's like you need to buy televisions, you got to buy refrigerators, you got to buy radios, you got to buy cars, you got to buy all this and that because you got to be the cool kids. You got to stay up to date of technology. So this leads to a bunch of industries developing for consumer culture where instead of building tanks and guns for the military, you're building refrigerators and cars and perhaps clothing. So notice that shift where it's more for the people instead of for the government. Okay, and then you have the Geneva Convention. So this is just basically where they want to disarm themselves, as in saying, let's not build more nukes, let's try to keep things chill, and nothing really happened. It wouldn't be until the SALT SALT talks with Brezhnev and Jimmy Carter where actually they would start to take away missiles. But that's going to happen later on, so I'm not going to talk about that now. But this is the first attempt at that. It does not work. All right, Sputnik, you guys know that. I'm not going to go over that. It starts the space race, which the U.S. wins by putting a person on the moon. Yeah. All right, U2 incident. This is important. So basically, this is the first incident where this could have led to war, and it didn't, luckily, because it just, it didn't go that far. But basically, the U.S. flew these things called U2s, right? I'm going to find a picture of this to help you guys understand that. So U2 plane. So these are the U2 planes. They're just like, they're spy planes. They're not really armed. They're very nimble and fast, and they're meant to more be used for reconnaissance. So they're just, they flew one out this time in America to try and just spy the USSR, and the USSR found that out and they shot it down with a missile. And so once that got shot down, basically you had the news and the headlines of American and USSR shot down from plane, right? That's a pretty big deal. So as you can imagine, this caused a lot of panic and stress within both countries, and Khrushchev wanted Eisenhower to apologize for that, which he did not do because, well, I guess he just didn't want to. And so that was a big difference where it kind of showed that both countries weren't playing nice at this point. They're all trying to escalate tensions and trying to get the better deal, preparing for war, you name it. And then this happens. So the deal is Turkey and, well, let me see if I have a map to show you guys this. Probably I don't, but I hope I do. Okay, this is Turkey, right? So this is Turkey. Over here in this area, you have the USA and other NATO countries kind of helping out Turkey because they're on the side of the democratic countries. And they basically put missiles in Turkey aiming at the USSR. Like I said, this is where it's connecting now. So imagine if you're the USSR and you look at the map and you see your southern neighbor right here point guns at you with missiles, you'd be kind of concerned, right? So this happens, and then the USSR retaliates by putting missiles in, guess where?
Cuba?
You guys all, yep, Cuba. You guys all know this. I'm pretty sure, yeah. So they put missiles in Cuba aimed at Florida and the U.S. and it gets pretty tense. And JFK, he is in charge of the U.S. during the time period. But before this happens, note one thing: the Bay of Pigs invasion. When JFK first got sworn into office, he agreed to this one thing where basically they were going to put ex-convicts of Cuba to give them weapons and supply them and try to help them overthrow Fidel Castro, because they thought that if we just give these guys a boost, they can start uprising their own country and win the war and then make it so that Cuba is no longer communist because they are kind of our neighbor and we don't want them to be a communist neighbor. So it fails though by big time. I mean, they literally get all killed and slaughtered and taken prisoner by the third day of invasion. So it really did not work out. And what you got to know for that is the Cuban Missile Crisis fails, and this causes Cuba to side even more of the USSR, where now they're trying to put missiles there because they're like, okay, you know what? Put missiles here because I don't feel safe with the USA being that close to me. So the missiles will deter them from attacking us. And then they negotiate, and then they take away the missiles because they realize that it's kind of dangerous for both sides. And so they both take missiles away. The US takes missiles away from Turkey, the USSR takes missiles away from Cuba, and this whole affair ends. Okay. Khrushchev eventually goes away, and you have Brezhnev. Brezhnev is a guy that is going to try and lead the USSR for a period of time. I guess it's kind of long, so we're going to try and shorten this up a little bit. Prague Spring happens, where basically in Czechoslovakia, they're trying to have a more reformist, more democratic policy reformed, where it's like you want people to be more free, but this eventually does not work, and it gets struck down. And the guy to know about this is Dubček, Alexander Dubček. He was the leader, and he tried to usher in the Prague Spring, where there was like more. It was called socialism of the human face, meaning people like could talk freely about the government. There was more democracy, and it was not as communist and not as rigid as the USSR's policy of socialism. And so then what happens was you have the Brezhnev Doctrine. So think of the Truman Doctrine, but then kind of copy and paste that for the USSR as in the Brezhnev Doctrine, basically where it's like the USSR and its allies will intervene in any socialist country to keep the peace and to keep them as communist. So the USA was like, hey, we're going to try and keep countries that are not communist to not be communist, and we're going to try and contain communism. Well, now Brezhnev is thinking like, the Americans in the West are encroaching on communist countries and are sparking these uprisings, so we need to contain them too, and we need to intervene when we have to. So then that happens. Okay, then Vietnam happens. Vietnam is a war that goes on for very long. You guys all know about it, I'm pretty sure. Just know that it was a pretty this unfortunate war. It lasted very long. A lot of things were kind of bad. I mean, there was like war crimes by the U.S. There was Agent Orange being sprayed in force. There was firebombing of cities, and civilian populations were killed in mass. The U.S. fought a really hot war there, and Nixon started to escalate tensions there by putting more U.S. troops there. But eventually, we withdrew because there's no point in fighting, and then Vietnam became communist. So that is the end result of that part. Everything called the Taunt. So the Taunt was basically where the USSR and the US started to cool down. They started to have better relationships, and they started to kind of thaw the rivalry they had before, where it's like they were really not compromising. Now they're trying to negotiate and stuff. And also Nixon visits China too to kind of ease tensions there between a communist and a non-communist country. And also the the Soviets and the Chinese split, where now, this is a very minor detail, I'm not going to go over this in a lot of detail because it's not that important. But basically just know that the two communist countries are now against each other, they're not friends, because one denounces the other, and so they are not cool with each other. Okay, then the Soviets invade Afghanistan. Why? Because there's Islamic extremism, and there's also a communist group of Islamic people in Afghanistan that want to create a communist state, and the USSR is like, I'm all for it, so we're going to help you guys out. And so they basically invaded Afghanistan to keep that going, and it was a very bloody war, because as you know, even the Americans right now, when we're in Afghanistan, it's a war that's not really going anywhere. It's one of those wars that could be like endless or whatever. And so just kind of understand that Afghanistan is a very hard country to invade, and it didn't really go well for the Soviets. Okay. Antonio, are you there? Okay. Yes, that's good. Yes, make sure you mention that. Yeah. Okay. Well, then I'll let you. I'll go to someone else then. Denzel, since you're here, playing Tetris still, really?
No, I'm not. I'm not here. What are you talking?
You're on Zen mode, really? Okay. Well, prove it to me that you're not.
Background.
Okay. Do you want to explain to me? Basically. Yes. Explain to me.
I suck at history, though.
Okay. What is your favorite aspect of the Cold War?
I don't know. I love the part of the war when they didn't really do anything,
Yes, I know, right? Okay. Okay. Do you know who Pope John Paul II is?
I wish I did.
Okay. How about this? Easier question. Okay. Could you talk about Gorbachev's policies of Perestroika and Glasnost?
I don't even know who that is.
You have Haygood. Why are you doing this to me? You have Haygood. They have Piper. This is 10 times worse for them.
Dude,
And I have Marschek. She literally just can't. She literally doesn't teach. It's just we learn ourselves, or teach ourselves. I don't drive R8s because I don't like those. Thank you, Ari. Very cool. Okay. All right. Well then, that's fine. I will go over this then. So, real quick, you have this thing called Solidarity that forms in Poland. It's a party where basically the people are trying to unionize, and it forms on a shipyard in Gdansk, Poland. And the people there want to, fight for better rights. They want to try and not be so communist, and they want free trade. It's a big deal. And this party is eventually supported by a Polish Pope John Paul II, and he supports them. Right, this is a big deal because a Pope supporting this group in the Eastern Bloc is like really, really controversial because they don't want to. The policy of the Senate has been to not really intervene in the USSR's sphere of influence because that can lead to war. So this is a big deal, and this solidarity movement is led by Lech Walesa. I'm butchering that. I'm sorry. This person's name, and so it was outlawed eventually. They were just deemed as an illegal organization, and they were driven underground, and they were kind of like forced to stay in the shadows of the USSR. Okay, this guy, really important, Mikhail Gorbachev. This is basically the end of the Cold War. This guy kind of leads us to the end. See, if you look at the date, it's 1895 to 1991. That's like pretty much. I mean, right now it's 2021. It's very, very recent.
Still alive?
I think he still is. Yeah, the man is probably still alive. He's old though, but he's still alive. That's how recent this is, guys. Or is he dead? Let me check, actually. How long? When did Gorbachev die, if he did die?
1492.
See, he's still alive. Still alive? He's alive, yeah. He's alive. He's still alive. So, guys, this is the detail. This is the thing I want to stress. This type of history, this unit is actually relevant because people here are still actually alive. You can still see them, you can still talk to them, they still exist. Unlike the Louis XIV, Louis XVI, those people that you don't really care about because they're all dead people. They're dead white people. These are actually alive people. Okay, this is actually people. Yeah, I know. I like because of dead white people. This is actually important because they're actually alive. Okay, that's the detail. That is the connection. So this is actually recent. All right, so Gorbachev, he basically comes in and he's like, I want to reform the USSR because we're lagging behind. We are not as economically developed as the West because communism and the planned economies are not really working out. So he starts this thing, a reform called Perestroika and Glasnost. Glasnost basically just it's transparency. The party starts to allow people to say things that they want to say. So if you want to say my teacher sucks or the government sucks, you could say that, and there's not going to be a gulag for you to go to. And Perestroika is basically where it's like you want to create a better economy where it's like, hey, more entrepreneurship, more free trade, promoting some capitalist ideas. So this is a good step in the right direction, but it's too much too late, guys. It's too late. Why? Because at this time period, these countries are just like, okay, you want to do all that? Well, then I want to do all that, but for myself. I don't want to be part of the USSR, so I want to leave. And so this time the US was so the USSR was kind of at that point where it couldn't really stay stable, and Glasnost and Perestroika basically just marked the end where it's like these countries were like, okay, I'll take advantage of Gorbachev's kindness and generosity to where I know that I can implement these things and not get purged by the KGB or not be attacked by tanks or not be thrown in a gulag. So I'll do that. I'll implement these reforms. And then this got to the point where they got so comfortable with it that they were just like, okay, I'm just gonna do my own thing now. I'm gonna separate. And this is basically the collapse of the Soviet Union, where in 1991, there is no Soviet Union. It ends. Yep. So that's basically the end of the Cold War of that time period. Okay. And then, I might guess, what else do I want to talk about? Okay, so, didn't go over this in the textbook, but there's a thing called Comecon. Comecon is important because this is basically just like the USSR's version of the EU. Okay, or just it's more like the World Bank for the USSR countries. So, the EU forms after the European Steel Community, coal and steel community, where they were trading resources because they're all friends and they're all close related trading. So they formed the EU eventually, which is what you see now. It's just this country. It's this big set of countries that all are connected. I mean, now it's a lot more because these Eastern Bloc countries have joined it, but that's a different detail going for later. And so, basically, just know that the EU forms, and that Comecon was the Soviet counterpart of that, where basically they wanted to buffer up their eastern countries by providing aid. Think of it like the Marshall Plan, but for the USSR. And the USSR and the communists had a different perspective on having economic growth. They were more about planned economies, meaning they would have kind of like Stalin's 5-year plans, where it's have this level of industrial output by this year, build more things, construct more things, follow these quotas, these rigorous, strict guidelines, because we need to get better and we have certain goals, active goals. Whereas the US and the other countries are just produce what you want. We're giving you guys the tools and the opportunity, go have fun with it. So there's more leniency with that. Okay, so that is pretty much the Cold War for you guys in a nutshell. I know that kind of talked more about the middle. I didn't mean to stay so long on this, but I guess it kind of got wrapped up. My apologies. I hope you guys are paying attention. If not, I recommend just kind of studying this. Yes, of course. All right, I'm gonna take questions now. Anyone have any questions? If you want to pull up the study guide and just ask me for boxes to fill out, I'll literally do that because I can do that for you guys. So basically, like I said, when the Soviets and the Western people were like, "Hey, about Eastern Europe, should we allow them to have democratic elections?" The U.S. and like the Truman Doctrine and Churchill, they all wanted the USSR to have these elections for European countries in the East because they're like, you can't just annex them, right? They're not part of the USSR. They're still their own countries. They're still free. So you have to give them elections that are free. And Stalin said, well, okay, fine, because I don't want to do that, but I'll quote unquote do it, right? And Tony, you know where that goes, right? Where basically they just don't actually give any free elections. It's a whole scam. So they basically just what's the example here? It's like whenever you promise something but you don't do it, or you lie to them. Basically that. I see Laddie is giving a lot of epic. I think. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about the collapse of it, right? So let me see if I have something here that can help with that. Because this is basically just like a real quick, recap. Oh, great, didn't have that. Okay, so in 1989, as this timeline says, the Berlin Wall falls, signaling the end of the Soviet Union for the division of East versus West Germany. So let me find that for you guys. Berlin Wall falling.
You better, well.
Okay, here we go. So as you can see, right, they're just tearing it down. And as you can tell, guess what side has the graffiti on it? Who can tell me that? And
West.
why? Why, Andy? Why does the West have graffiti on it?
Because the communists are mad.
Communists hated capitalists.
Because what?
They're mad.
But like, what detail, right, guys? Think about this. If you were a communist on the East, do you think it'd be easy to get away with graffiti?
No.
You get gulagged, and also, let me see if I can find these pictures for you. Berlin Wall.
You get guillotined.
These things, guys. These things. So guess what happened here? There was a Soviet guy. Imagine this. You're just standing around the border. There's a big fence, and then there's these guys with sniper rifles are just there, sitting there, waiting for anyone to try and cross the border to shoot them. They literally shot people on sight for that, guys. That is the difference. In Western Europe, in Western Germany, they didn't do that. They didn't give a crap. They're like, if you want to come here, please come here, be refugees, because I want you guys to escape the dreaded communism because it's not a bad deal for us. But for the Soviets, they're like, you cannot leave, otherwise we'll literally kill you, we'll shoot you, which is what happened here. To where the Berlin Wall was like, they had these checkpoints with snipers, and this guy's some binoculars. He's like literally doing his job, and basically you just can't get away with graffiti because you literally get killed or you get detained. So when I ask what side is the graffiti on, it's the West. Why? Because it kind of shows its symbolism for the difference between the communist and the capitalist side. Where the capitalists, there's more freedom of expression, there's more democracy, so you see more graffiti, you see more expression of thought. You see like punk rock, you see pop culture, you see Coca-Cola, but then in the East you just kind of see a bland universe. Like you see like this wall, right? You see this part of the wall that's like white, that's the eastern half of Germany. I could just guess that by looking at it. Okay, cool. So that is just a little detail that I want to put in there. And so yeah, afterwards they make the Berlin Wall fall because they don't want to be divided. They tear it down, and then that marks the end of the separation between East and West Germany, and then you have the unified Germany that you see today on the map. So that's pretty much what I got now. Is that enough for your study guide? Yeah. So the Truman Doctrine is basically, it's where the Truman, President Truman, he was a staunch anti-communist. He did not like communism. He wanted to stop it. And so he basically said that, I will do my best as part of America's leader to stop the spread of communism, to contain it, right? The key word is containment. So make sure that you mention containment in your study guide, but also if you see on your test, associated with, the American foreign policy at the time. So Truman basically wanted to stop communism from spreading, and he did this by basically promising that they would, help out countries in need to prevent them from becoming communist. So that kind of goes to the Marshall Plan, but also that they would intervene to, kind of contain communism. And that kind of is shown in the Korean War, where you have Douglas MacArthur coming in to support South Korea, and the United Nations also. And you see in Vietnam, where the U.S. is deploying, troops to physically prevent communism from spreading to southern Vietnam. And you also see that in China, where they're trying to supply the nationalists. Let me find a picture of this, actually. Nationalist versus communist China map. All right, here we go. So this is the diagram I want to show you. So this is the communists. These are the nationalists. They're on the east. These guys are in the west, like I showed you. These guys are in the mountains mostly, but they're really good fighters. They have really good generals because they're very skilled at that. And so the Americans support the East, which are the Democratic people, the Republicans, and eventually lose. But this shows how the Truman Doctrine is working to suppress communism because they're trying to support the right side that they're a part of. So it's like if anyone is fighting against a communist nation and they're not communist, then yes, we're going to give you aid because we want you to win. So basically it's the idea that a threat of communism anywhere is a threat to all nations everywhere. And that's kind of building off the quote that Martin Luther had, where it's like inequality in one place equals inequality everywhere. I forgot the quote. What was it? Okay, inequality quote. I swear I should know for Quizball.
Oh, MLK.
No, not this.
Yeah, it was
okay. Yeah, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That's the quote. So yeah, kind of like that basically, where it's like the Americans were like, communism anywhere is a threat to the world everywhere. Because communism, in their eyes, is something that they should stop. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I didn't go over that because that was not part of the study guide. But basically, it's where you have a peaceful. It's the Velvet Revolution. So, if I have a picture for you guys to reference this, basically it's in Czechoslovakia. It's a peaceful revolution where after Gorbachev kind of starts to loosen up the restrictions of the press and the media and democracy. People are just coming to the streets. They're kind of protesting. They're peacefully doing it to where they're waving around Czech flags. They're saying we should be part of a new country. We should split from the USSR. And it's what's known as the peaceful phase of revolution, where instead of having the uprisings like the Prague Spring and the Hungarian uprising, where they're being put down by USSR forces, in this case, nothing's happening. There's no gulags. There's no KGB. There's no tanks rolling down the streets to shoot these guys. They get to actually have change. And so this is basically the end of Czechoslovakia being communist. Because after this happens, they become their own country. They become, the Czech Republic and also Slovakia in the east. And this happens because this does not get put down. And other countries also follow suit in their own. They call it the peaceful revolutions because they're not violent. They're not dramatic in that way, and they work. Oh, did I talk about immigration yet? I don't think I did. Oh, I didn't talk about decolonization either. Oh my god. How did I talk about that? Whoops. That's sad. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't mention decolonization. Do you guys know much about decolonization?
Countries decolonize.
Yes. So basically, here's all you gotta know. After World War II, European countries were not strong enough to fight wars in other countries to control them for colonialism. So basically what they did was they just stopped controlling them. So India gained independence with Gandhi and eventually Nehru, and Pakistan. The partition of India happened afterwards. Also countries like the Congo, the Belgians gave the Congo. Egypt became its own state. Algeria fought a war, civil war against France. Charles de Gaulle signed the Evian Accords to grant them independence. You have other things happening too, like the Mama Uprising in Kenya, where it eventually allows them to become their own country. I'm just going to show you a map because that's a lot of talking. Decolonization map. This might help you guys out. So, yeah. Cool. That is very overwhelming. I'm sorry. Okay, so this is basically the map of all the European countries that control them. So this you have France here, Britain here, you have the Belgians in the Congo, you have Portugal, you have Germany, and at the end you have this map. Where is it? Not that map. Not that map. Not that map. Come on, where is it?
Oh, this one.
This map, yeah, roughly. Where you see all these other countries that become their own states because they're gaining independence. Okay. And this all happens in a wave of decolonization, and it also causes a wave of democratization, where more countries are becoming democratic because of that. But also, ironically, in Africa, there's more instability. There's more internal fighting, civil wars, warlords. It's really not democratic. So that didn't really work out for them. But in other cases, it kind of does. Okay.
Yo, what was some of the propaganda the U.S. used against the Soviet Union?
So propaganda the Soviet used against the Americans, or the Americans used against the Soviet Union?
The Americans used against the Soviet Union.
Okay, yeah. So mainly you gotta think about posters and cartoons, where it's like they're trying to portraying the Soviets as this demon of the East, where they're just trying to kind of paint them as the enemies, where nobody really wants to be with, or they don't want to support communism. I mean, also in the Pledge of Allegiance, where the United States added under God in the Pledge of Allegiance because of the Cold War, where they thought we need to mention that God is on our side, so that it sounds like the Cold War is saying that the Americans should win. And I mean, they did win that, so that is a nuance there. But basically, it's just where the state just really did not like communism, and they did their best to contain it and educate the youth to a way to where basically all the boomers, all the millennials, most of them are not really communist because they were just trained as a kid to be hardwired into hating them. Yep, that is education, the power of education. And the Soviets did the same thing, where Soviets had cartoons and propaganda. I think I had one on DBQ where it's like, let me find one for you guys. It was like a missile guy. It's like a missile thing. I forgot what it's called. Missile guy. Oh yeah, the missile diplomat or something like that. Come on, what was it? The missile diplomat. Wait, Andy, you had a DBQ, right? You don't remember this?
Yeah.
Yeah, was it called the missile diplomat or something like that? Propaganda.
No.
Shoot, what's it called? No, where is it? Okay, well I forgot what it was called, but it's like basically just a picture of a guy holding a missile. It's an American guy holding a missile, and the Soviets use that to kind of show that the Americans are to get us. They have nuclear weapons, so we should become stronger to repel them. And this is also just more propaganda, where you see the well, I don't know if that really counts, but this definitely does count, where it's like the Soviets need to become stronger to defend themselves and to do for the motherland or whatever. That's much more like World War II stuff, but it's still propaganda nonetheless. And there's times where they demonize the West. Interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh boy.
That's a good one, yeah. Okay, so let me find a map for you guys, because this is kind of hard to visualize if you don't know where they are as two countries. So, you have Armenia on the left, Azerbaijan on the right. If you want to know what this is on a bigger map, basically it's in, well...
It's on top left.
What? Oh yeah, whoops, it's right here, yeah. I see, yeah. It's in this region, basically, of the Caucasus. Where basically you have these two countries. They're very small, but they have tensions because of ethnic conflicts and stuff, where they basically they can't get along. There's also just territorial disputes, and it was just pretty bad. But it happens because of the Soviet Union collapsing, where all these countries become their own thing, and all these ethnic states want to form their own countries. And you see this just huge usurping of countries, especially in the Balkans, or not in the Balkans, the Caucasus. Well, if I can find a map of the Caucasus, how do I even spell that? I spelled that completely wrong. Caucasus map. So you see this part where it's all these mini countries like Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan. These, oh my god, these are so small regions. These are all, those are part of Russia, but they're all their own little prefectures, if you want to call it that. But basically, these countries all started splitting up from the USSR, and they're all ethnically different, they're politically different, and because of that, they had some conflicts. And this happens very often with Israel and Palestine too, where it's the two countries do not get along, and they fight, and they have war. And also the breakup of Yugoslavia, I didn't get to talk about that, but basically what happened here was Yugoslavia is a country led by one person, but then afterwards, a guy named Milosevic, he's a Serb nationalist, he started to purge Bosnians in his country, and also invaded other countries like Bosnia and Croatia, and this caused a war. A war, basically like a civil war, where there's fighting on all sides. There's this bunch of militias being formed. The USSR really didn't help put this down, because at that time they weren't really, they weren't really trying. So this part was just basically where they were just a frenzy of war, and also NATO got involved, where basically they had this thing called Allied Front. Operation Allied Front is what you have to know. But this is not this is a detail that you do not have to memorize at all. It's just an idea of what you get to realize. So basically, it was just a bunch of bombing runs on Serbia. The NATO countries, they use these stealth planes, and they threw bombs at military targets in Serbia to put down their invasion of these other Yugoslav countries, or these Balkan countries. It worked pretty well, but it didn't stop the war, and it didn't stop the genocide that ensued, because there's a lot of ethnic cleansing, where the Serbs were being killed, the Bosnians were being killed, just because they were Bosnians and Serbs, not because of the war, not because of prisoners, it's because of their race. So understand that too. A lot of this kind of shows that the peace really is hard to obtain when you let these countries have just free reign over political what do you call it? Control decisions, whatever. Okay, that is Yugoslavia for you.
Is the Chenchin War also important to know?
The Chenchin War, yeah. So that's basically in Russia, where basically it was where Russia had to put down this little rebellion inside Chechnya. It's a little bit of a small detail. I don't think you have to know for the DBQ or for the MCQ, but it's kind of for context, I guess, where basically this little area was being attacked. They tried to become independent like these other countries like Azerbaijan and Georgia, but it wasn't successful because they just were put down because the Soviets invaded, or not Soviets, the Russians invaded, and they deployed the military to put that down violently. And this is also even now Putin and stuff, they're still having to deal with that, where there's oil fields here, so they don't want to give that up. But basically there's just ethnic conflict here, and also political conflict and strife. So that's right there. Alright, and Tony, you have anything else? If we're recording this, we need to put timestamps. I'm just saying. Yes, India. Here, I'll do you guys a favor. I'll do you guys a big solid. Let me just real quick. You guys are the same guy that we do, right? You guys are the... Okay. Small boxes, right? Yep. Shit. Alright. Okay, time to do this. WeTransfer. When in doubt, use WeTransfer. Yeah, it's really OP. Because you can download, you can select anything, and it's free, and you just have to... I love this so much. And also you can attach videos that are up to 2 gigs. So, get a link. Alright, I'm gonna get you guys my study guide. Because you guys probably need that. It's basically what I just, but don't copy and paste this word by word. It's also what I wrote. I wrote this out, I didn't get to type it, so you can't actually copy and paste this. But it's pictures of what I wrote. Yes, I named it that. But yeah, basically, it's just also they probably rotate it too, which is a problem, but I think it'd be fine. Hopefully you read my handwriting. If you can't, then well, unfortunate. But yeah, I just kind of referenced that for what to write on the study guide, since there's a lot. Yeah, there's a whole feminism job. Yeah, I know that's the part I didn't like, because I was like, that is annoying. It's so. I know it's painful, but that's part of this unit. So, but just know that there's 2 ways of feminism. The first way of feminism is about suffrage, where it's Susan B. Anthony, Mary Catherine Stanton, 1800s. Yeah, really early, just for voting rights. The 19th Amendment gets passed to where now women can vote, and then you have the second wave, where it's more about social factors. So, even today, there's a third wave now of liberal democracies and how we should treat women, mansplaining, that kind of stuff, where it's this new form of feminism is also emerging. But the second wave basically is an intellectual development, which we have to know, and it's basically where it's women are now asking better rights. Just 1900s definitely. Like after World War II in that time. So like, World War II, the countries all put aside their differences because they're just like, we need to fight the war. We need to work as a total. The total war made it so that you have a home front where it's like you're producing guns, ammunition, food for the soldiers. And after war ends, you have a shift back to consumerist policies and consumerist culture. So where like women are like, hey, now we should probably start advocating for better rights, for better treatment, for better wages, for better treatment, yada yada yada. We're able to divorce, we're able to get abortions, we're able to use birth control pills, condoms, AIDS, that kind of stuff. Yes, that's the second wave. No, that's the second wave. Yeah, that's the second wave. Yeah. Third wave is our society. Third wave is like nowadays, where it's like what you see in the television, what you see in the news. This is being recorded, isn't it, Antonio? Wow, okay, Antonio. Among Us. Well, okay, Antonio. Not about to.
I want to watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I see it on your Crunchyroll.
Yes, I am. I'm on Stars Crusaders. I was earlier. Yes. Why should an ad? What?
No, what I don't get is they canceled fucking before it came out. They canceled like Nagatoro, but they don't cancel Redo of Healer. It makes no sense to me. And Redo of Healer is getting a second season. That shit is getting a second season. And is my audio or is that just you? Oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's fine. It'll be on YouTube, but it's not gonna get a lot of views. So it's just for anyone who didn't make it.
It's on YouTube?
It'll be on YouTube eventually, yeah.
Where?
In my YouTube channel. I send the links in the announcements. Yes, this is my last one for Psych. So, like that YouTube channel. You'll probably see it there, but I'll send the link in the announcements. But yeah, I'm not. I stopped watching this for a while though because I had homework and like class. But I want to go back. Yeah, I think we're done here. But basically, if you have anything else,
TLC 1 year anniversary video.
TLC 1 year what? Where?
Tips to be a good